The alarms screaming through Nexus Station's command center weren't the routine proximity alerts Admiral Sarah Chen had grown used to over 4 decades of military service. These were the deep, bone-rattling warnings that meant one thing: death was coming, and it was coming fast. "Admiral," Lieutenant Commander Torres's voice cracked as he spoke, his hands trembling over the holographic display. "You need to see this. Now." Chen moved to the tactical display, and her breath caught in her throat. Red icons swarmed across the star chart like angry hornets, each one representing a Zephyrian dreadnought. She had fought these aliens for 20 years, watched them glass entire human colonies without hesitation. But she had never seen anything like this. "Final count?" she asked, though part of her didn't want to know. 247 capital ships, Torres whispered. "Crew complement estimated at over 3 million. "Admiral, this isn't just an invasion fleet. This is an extinction event." The words hit the command center like a physical blow. Officers stopped breathing. Console lights seemed to dim. Everyone present understood what they were looking at: the largest military force ever assembled in known history, and it was aimed directly at the heart of human civilization. Chen's mind raced through the tactical possibilities, but every scenario ended the same way. Complete annihilation. The Zephyrians had finally decided to end the war permanently, and they had brought enough firepower to crack planets. "Our defensive capabilities?" Chen asked, though she knew the answer would break her heart. 38 ships total. The Prometheus leads 17 heavy cruisers and 20 destroyers. "Admiral, we're facing 6-to-1 odds in capital ships alone, but their technology advantage makes it worse." "Much worse." 6-to-1. Chen closed her eyes and saw the faces of every colony she'd failed to protect, every ship she'd lost to Zephyrian superiority. Her daughter lived on Earth. Her grandsons were starting their military academy training. In 18 hours, they might all be dead. "There's something else," Torres continued, his voice dropping to barely audible. "Deep space sensors detected quantum disruptors on their lead ships. Intelligence confirmed it 3 times because they couldn't believe it themselves. Quantum disruptors. Weapons that could unravel the fabric of space-time itself, turning entire star systems into expanding voids of nothingness." The Zephyrians weren't just planning conquest. They were planning total erasure of human existence. Chen felt something cold settle in her stomach. This wasn't war anymore. This was genocide with a countdown timer. Time to intercept. 18 hours, Admiral. 18 hours to save her species. Chen turned from the display, her mind already reaching for the one option she'd hoped never to use. It was desperate, untested, and probably suicidal. But it was the only card humanity had left to play. "Get me Captain Marcus Vale. Priority Alpha." "And Torres?" She met his eyes. "Initiate Protocol Omega." The word sent visible shockwaves through the command staff. Protocol Omega was the Alliance's most classified contingency plan, so dangerous that 3 admirals had refused to authorize even theoretical testing. Some called it humanity's last hope. Others called it madness with a weapons system. Captain Vale's scarred face appeared on the comm screen moments later. Behind him, his bridge was a controlled chaos of preparation. Vale was legendary throughout the fleet, a tactical genius who had never lost an engagement. He was also completely unpredictable, a man who treated impossible odds like personal challenges. "Sarah," Vale said, using her first name despite protocol. "I'm guessing this isn't about my overdue maintenance reports." "Marcus, I need a miracle. The kind that only you specialize in." Vale's expression shifted, becoming predatory. "How big a miracle?" 247 Zephyrian capital ships equipped with quantum disruptors. They reach Nexus in 18 hours, Earth in 3 days. "Marcus, if we lose here, there won't be a human species left to remember the battle." Vale was quiet for a long moment, and Chen could see him processing the impossible mathematics of survival. When he spoke again, his voice carried the cold edge she remembered from their worst battles. Rules of engagement. There are no rules. Win, or watch our children die. Understood. I'll need complete tactical autonomy and access to every black project the Experimental Weapons Division ever conceived. Chen nodded. Already authorized. Whatever you need, Marcus. Whatever it takes. Give me 16 hours to prepare. Then we'll remind the galaxy why humans are the most dangerous species to ever leave their home planet. The transmission ended, leaving Chen alone with the weight of her decision. She had just handed humanity's survival to one man and his crew of misfits. History would either call it the most brilliant command decision ever made, or the final mistake that doomed their species. 16 hours later, Admiral Kethvar watched his magnificent fleet drop out of hyperspace at the edge of the Nexus system. 2 centuries of Zephyrian expansion had led to this moment, the final elimination of the upstart human species that dared to resist their empire. Magnificent, Kethvar murmured, admiring the perfect formation of his dreadnoughts. Each ship carried enough firepower to sterilize a planet's surface. Together, they could reshape the very structure of local spacetime. Begin the attack. Target their heavy ships first, but leave the station intact until they surrender. I want them to watch their fleet die before we end their civilization. The Zephyrian dreadnoughts opened fire in perfect synchronization, energy beams thick as skyscrapers crossing the void in brilliant devastation. The pathetic human defensive fleet returned fire immediately, but their weapons looked like sparks against the alien juggernaut. Within minutes, 3 human cruisers became expanding clouds of superheated debris. Kethvar smiled, mandibles clicking with satisfaction. This would be over soon. But something was wrong. The human fleet wasn't retreating or trying to protect their precious station. Instead, they were advancing in a formation that violated every principle of tactical doctrine. They were deliberately exposing themselves to maximum firepower. Admiral, his sensor officer reported, voice tight with confusion, the human flagship is generating massive power fluctuations. Energy readings are beyond our sensor capabilities. Before Kethvar could respond, space itself seemed to scream. Reality twisted, folded, and suddenly the 38 human ships weren't where they had been. They had somehow stepped outside normal spacetime, reappearing directly within his perfect formation like ghosts materializing from nightmares. The quantum fold drive. Vale's secret weapon, born from the darkest corners of human desperation and genius. The technology was unstable, lethal to its own crews, and had killed more test pilots than enemy ships. But when it worked, it made traditional warfare obsolete. Vale's voice cut across all frequencies, calm as death itself. Zephyrian fleet, you have entered sovereign human space with genocidal intent. You have 30 seconds to begin immediate withdrawal, or we will demonstrate why evolution favored persistence over size. Kethvar's laughter boomed across his bridge. Human arrogance remains unchanged even facing extinction. All ships, concentrate fire on their flagship. Let's end this theatrical display. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Every Zephyrian ship within range opened fire on the Prometheus, energy beams that could melt mountains slamming into the human dreadnoughts' shields. The barriers flared white-hot and collapsed instantly. The hull began to buckle under assault that would have vaporized lesser ships. But Vale wasn't trying to survive the attack. He was buying time for something the galaxy had never seen before. Deep within the Prometheus, experimental reactors that had never been tested at full capacity roared to life like caged stars. The ship's entire power grid rerouted to a single system, the prototype stellar compression cannon. The weapon created artificial stellar cores, miniature suns compressed into projectiles that burned with the fury of dying gods. All ships, Vale broadcasted to his fleet, his voice steady despite alarms screaming around him, execute synchronized fold jumps. Pattern Delta 7. Show them what human ingenuity looks like when we're fighting for our children. The human ships vanished again, reappearing in a perfect sphere around the densest concentration of Zephyrian dreadnoughts. At point-blank range, weapons designed for long-distance combat became instruments of surgical devastation. Rail guns punched through alien armor like paper. Missile swarms overwhelmed point defenses in seconds. Kethvar watched in growing horror as his invincible fleet was torn apart by ships that shouldn't have existed. But the real surprise was yet to come. The Prometheus, her hull glowing cherry red from the earlier bombardment, completed her charging sequence. The stellar compression cannon fired, launching a contained star directly into the heart of his formation. The result defied description. The miniature stellar core detonated with the concentrated fury of a supernova, vaporizing everything within 10 kilometers and creating chain reactions that rippled through nearby ships. Dozens of dreadnoughts simply ceased to exist, their atoms scattered across light-years of space in an expanding nebula of destruction. Kethvar felt his world collapse as a quarter of his fleet disappeared in a single, impossible blast. Humans were supposed to be primitives, barely capable of interstellar travel. They weren't supposed to possess weapons that could harness the fundamental forces of stellar creation. All ships, retreat to safe distance. Kethvar screamed, his voice cracking. Reform battle lines and prepare quantum disruptors. But Vale wasn't finished. The human fleet folded space again, appearing scattered throughout his formation in small groups. Instead of a single target, they had become dozens of individual nightmares, each impossible to predict or counter. The Prometheus, scarred and radiating heat like a dying star, materialized directly above Kethvar's flagship. Vale's voice came through the comm system, calm as winter death. Admiral Kethvar. I have a stellar compression round targeted at your bridge. Your quantum disruptors won't help if your constituent atoms drifting in solar wind. Listen very carefully to my terms, because I will not repeat them. Kethvar's claws dug deep gouges into his command chair. In 2 centuries of Zephyrian expansion, no admiral had ever been forced to negotiate from weakness. Their empire had conquered 17 star systems through overwhelming technological superiority. Yet here he sat, facing a human who had just demonstrated weapons that rewrote the fundamental laws of warfare. Speak your terms, human, he whispered. Complete withdrawal from human space within 72 hours. Return of all occupied territories and enslaved populations. War reparations paid in technology and resources over the next decade. And most importantly, Admiral, never return. Because next time, I won't be interested in taking prisoners. Prisoners? Kethvar's voice cracked with rage and disbelief. You destroyed 70 of my ships. I could have destroyed all of them. The stellar compression cannon has 5 more charges. Your fleet has 5 major formations remaining. The mathematics are quite simple, Admiral. The silence stretched across space as Kethvar processed the impossible choice before him. Accept humiliation and survival, or face complete annihilation against weapons his empire's greatest scientists insisted couldn't exist. Around them, the battle had evolved into something unprecedented in galactic history. Human ships folded in and out of reality like vengeful spirits, striking at will before vanishing into dimensions his sensors couldn't track. The Zephyrian fleet, designed for conventional warfare, couldn't adapt to enemies that treated spacetime itself as a tactical advantage. I need proof, Kethvar finally said, grasping for any delay. Proof that you can deliver on your threats. Vale's response was to target the smallest Zephyrian formation, 3 heavy cruisers maintaining position near the system's edge. The stellar compression cannon fired again, and 3 ships that had terrorized human colonies for decades became expanding clouds of elementary particles in less than a heartbeat. Proof enough, Admiral. Kethvar closed his eyes, feeling the weight of history crushing down on him. In that moment, he understood that everything had changed forever. The balance of galactic power, the assumptions that had driven centuries of Zephyrian expansion, the very nature of interstellar warfare itself. The Zephyrian Empire accepts your terms, he said, each word tasting like poison and defeat. We will begin immediate withdrawal. But the consequences of the Battle of Nexus extended far beyond a single humiliated fleet. Within hours, news of the engagement had spread throughout the galaxy like wildfire. The Zephyrian Empire, greatest military power in known space, had been forced to retreat by a numerically inferior human fleet using impossible weapons. Alien civilizations that had dismissed humans as technological primitives suddenly found themselves reassessing every assumption about galactic power structures. Trade agreements were renegotiated overnight. Military alliances shifted like sand in a hurricane. Some species sought immediate diplomatic contact with the Terran Alliance, desperate for access to quantum-fold technology. Others began crash programs to develop countermeasures against stellar compression weapons. The hegemony of worlds, the galaxy's primary governing body, extended an immediate invitation for full human membership with voting privileges. Civilizations enslaved by Zephyrian expansion suddenly found themselves free as the Empire recalled all fleets to defend their core worlds from potential human retaliation. Captain Vale became a legend overnight, but fame sat uncomfortably on his shoulders. In his official report, he meticulously credited every crew member and research scientist who had made the victory possible. When reporters pressed him for details about the battle, his responses were brief, technical, and deflected attention from his personal role. Admiral Chen understood his reluctance. Like her, Vale grasped the deeper implications of their victory. The Battle of Nexus hadn't just been a military triumph. It had been a revelation that would reshape galactic civilization in ways they couldn't predict or control. The stellar compression technology that had won the battle was now the most sought-after secret in the galaxy. Quantum-fold drives would be reverse-engineered within months by civilizations with centuries more experience in advanced physics. The weapons that had given humanity its stunning victory would soon be available to anyone with sufficient resources and determination. The real question wasn't whether humans could win another battle like Nexus. The question was whether they could survive the consequences of winning this one. 6 months later, the galaxy looked fundamentally different. The Zephyrian Empire had fragmented into civil war as subject species rebelled against their weakened overlords. Trade routes closed to humans for centuries suddenly opened, flooding human space with alien technologies that accelerated development by decades. But not everyone celebrated humanity's victory. In the depths of Zephyrian space, Admiral Kethvar worked tirelessly on a new project, his humiliation transformed into obsessive determination. If humans could rewrite the rules of warfare, the Zephyrians would rewrite them again. His scientists labored around the clock, developing weapon systems specifically designed to counter quantum-fold drives and stellar compression cannons. The Battle of Nexus had ended one war, but it had begun something far more dangerous, a technological arms race that would determine not just humanity's future, but the future of galactic civilization itself. And somewhere in the vast darkness between stars, Captain Marcus Vale continued his patrols, knowing that the next battle would be even more critical than the last. Because now the entire galaxy was watching, learning, and preparing for the day when humanity's temporary advantages would no longer be enough to guarantee survival. The Battle of Nexus had changed everything forever. The only question remaining was whether humanity was ready for the galaxy they had created.